Astra Travelers, and welcome to another episode of Tales of Teyvat, a Genshin Lore Podcast. Last week, we talked about everyone's favorite second son, Xingqiu. We're really hoping we'll get some more insight into who his family is one day soon. This week, we're going to be discussing our favorite enemy-turned-bestie, Scaramouche, the Wanderer, and everything that comes in between. Additionally, I want to remind travelers to visit talesoftevat.com to see visual representations of the lore mentioned during today's podcast. Your guides have put them together for you to make things a little easier to understand. On our site, you can also find some awesome goodies, including artist spotlights from the community for each episode, wallpapers for download, and a way to check out some of our favorite Genshin merch. Finally, feel free to email us at talesoftevatpod@gmail.com to let us know what you think of this week's episode and what topics you'd like to see in the future. But let's get into it. Let's talk about Scara. So my first experience with Scara was the Inazuma Archon line. I know for some people that's not, but I also just knew him as like son of A.
Son of a
bitch.
I'm with B. I knew him as a son of a bitch.
like this goddamn puppet of a puppet of a puppet. This bitch.
So what we know about Scaramouche for the most part is that Scaramouche is a puppet created by A, and he was the initial creation prior to her making the Ryan Shogun. So it's like he was the first prototype almost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was a prototype, proof of concept. And the initial plan was for A to discard him after making sure that the puppet technology worked, which, by the way, Yaimiko says is a technology that has been lost to time. So I'm very curious to know how that technology came around, where they got it, why did it leave?
I think they say or state that it's a Conrian art that was lost.
I was thinking that because Conria has so many of these robots and like mechanical things going on.
Yeah, there's smart ass people up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. All the things you can do if you're not worshiping a god.
Yeah. And you're like living underground. There's nothing else to do.
Exactly. We're dwarves.
But yeah, so A created this puppet of Scaramouche as a proof of concept prototype. And the original plan was to discard him, but A witnessed him crying in his sleep and realized that he was dreaming. And again, we're going back to this theme of dreams happening and this weird like importance and like strange sort of vibes going on with the idea of dreams. And Scara would cry in his dreams, which means he was crying in his sleep. And A witnessed that and deemed him to be too fragile, to be like the actual like true puppet that she was trying to build. But A took pity on him, and instead of destroying him, she sealed his powers, within his body and sent him forth to live as a human being. That was later taken advantage of by the Fatui, who got him to, come into their ranks, and they actually unsealed his power. They actually tinkered with him to make him even more powerful than A had designed him to be.
It's so fucked up. He did not consent. I don't think he actually did consent to that. He was like, I can be powerful. They're gonna open what?
It's really interesting too because they unleashed this power inside of him that A had locked up, and we see the vice versa happen to Kale in the manga where Sino locks up her power. So, it doesn't seem like it's just something that the Fatui knows how to do as well, or the gods at that point, unless, I don't know, Sino could end up being some god. He's possessed by something. I don't know.
Ooh.
You never
Crack
know.
Theory.
Yeah, crack theory. Sino is actually a god. He
Maybe
is
one of the
unknown god.
Small gods. A small god that survived the Archon Wars from Sumeru, and in fact, he knew King Dottore, and that's why he stays away from Elhatham. Anyway,
he's the god of bad fashion.
The god of shorts.
The god of
you would never see him at a ball.
The god of bad jokes.
Yeah.
The god of TCG. There's a lot of gods that he could be. But yeah, it's very interesting that we see that as another theme across the game, or at least across lore, is like the idea of being able to unlock and lock up potential power. It's interesting too, because it's like, is that what a vision is doing? Is a vision like unlocking your potential power?
Yeah.
And also like, Kazuo was able to unleash like the power of a second vision. So it's, I don't know, there's a lot of interesting thoughts around that.
I like that in that small snippet we've already gone through 3 of his names.
Yep.
Because he's the most named character, especially on top of the fact of the latest Archon quest where you get to rename him.
Oh, yeah.
Now he has a whole lot more names from everybody else.
Question. What did you name Skara and why? I need to know.
Okay. I was going to name him Patrick initially because he just looks like a Patrick.
No.
And then I didn't because I remembered that the voice actor's name is Patrick. And though I love Patrick I think it's Patrick Pederza. I love him. He's great. He's very funny. But I was like, I don't want to name him after the voice actor. The voice actor probably doesn't want that either. Patrick, if you're listening, let us know. So I went back and I named him Kyo after Kyo Soma from Fruits Baskets because Kyo, unlike B's opinion, in my opinion, starts off as a very angsty person and soon comes to realize his trauma and becomes a better person.
Ugh. Team Yuki all the way.
No, Team Alone. They should have all been single. They needed immense therapy.
As a
Omiji.
rat, how dare you? Yuki? No.
What about y'all? What did you guys name him?
I also went with an anime route. I'm like, oh, he remembers who he is. And I thought for a minute, I'm like, let's name him Niwa for like after his dad, like his like chosen father. And I'm like, wait, that's gonna get confusing. And then I was like, oh, wait, he remembered himself, like Haku from Spirited Away. So I named him Haku.
Oh,
I should have named him
that's so
Kohaku.
nice.
I should have named him his full name Kohaku, but I named him Haku. I looked up Sanskrit for wind and was thinking, I can't remember what it was now, but I was thinking of that and I'm like, Haku just is good. Yeah.
Also, Kohaku makes me think of Inuyasha. I know we bring it up all the time.
I have some references I'll talk about later, but yes.
What about y'all, B and Tiff?
I named mine Moonchild because
So
that
cute.
is the name that Bastian gives the unnamed princess in the Neverending Story to save her. It's the name that he yells out the window for years and years and years that I could never understand what he said. That was his mother's name. When I found out it was Moonchild, I was kind of perplexed because, some lady in the 80s walking around with the name Moonchild just seemed crazy. But yeah.
That is true.
That is so cute though.
I just want to say before B says his that I love so far where this is going because I know B's name.
Oh shit. Oh
It's such a
no.
different-
I named him Weasel. 'Cause I think he's like a sly, sneaky, bratty little piece of crap.
Don't hold
We
back.
just named him Scat. He's the Scat Man.
Yeah, I think you gave me a suggestion too of like another rodent type name.
Name
we
him
could
Hammy.
match.
Hammy the hamster. Oh, you could have named him Ferret Boy. Oh, this could have gotten real dirty. But most of us went wholesome and funny.
Weasel. Weasel kills me every time.
Me and Tiff are like heartwarming. The Patrick is like funny. But fucking Weasel.
I love that Hoyoverse really committed to it though. And like when he's in your party, when he's anywhere he's referenced, it says the name you gave him. I don't know why. Like I know that they change our name all the time, so like it shouldn't be that surprising, but there's something about that just made me go, oh, that's so cute. Look, he's Moonchild's in my party today.
And it was so
Aw.
confusing on his birthday when I got a letter from Kyo. I was like, who the fuck is Kyo? Why is he sending me a letter?
Oh my god, that's so funny.
Did y'all see the one where the person named him Balls and they got a letter from Balls? My name's Scara Balls.
I didn't do the quest until after his birthday, so I think I missed out on that.
Oh no.
A little, what the hell's this?
Yeah, I think so because I don't remember getting that. But I'm also so like gift hungry when I look at my
You didn't get the balls cake?
So we've gone through our names for him and we talked a little bit about some of the other names, but I think it's important to remember that, he is son of a puppet. He's also the 6th Fatui Harbinger, also known as the Balladeer. At one point we'll talk more about this later, lose his memory and become the Wanderer. So those are like the main names. He also has a name way back in the day in Inazuma,
Kuni Kazushi?
and we call him Kuni.
We can call him anything we want. We named him. Let's just call him Weasel.
Weasel,
Meow!
the country destroyer.
Okay, so here's a ton of names. I want to talk a little bit now about like when we first meet Skara. So for a select few and probably a very small group of
Beast.
people. No, I don't even think Beast makes this group. Scaramouche's first appearance ever in the game is in the Unreconciled Stars event, which was what, 1.3?
1.2?
1.1.
1.1?
1.1?
Mm-hmm.
This is bullshit. Oh my God. Pet peeve, real quick. Stop locking intrinsical lore bits like Albedo's lore and all these other lores behind these limited time events for anyone starting, like for me, Tiff, and Fiends, who started later and we were introduced to Skara in a different point and everyone was acting as if we knew him. What the fuck?
B, were
Me
you
too.
playing? Yeah, I was gonna say you weren't playing yet, right?
No, I started playing shortly after this event. This was in November of 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the game launched in late September. So
Yeah, it was like a couple of days after my birthday. And I was like, what is this? It also came out with Fortnite. Fortnite, I think, has my birthday.
They actually changed his name. If you didn't do that event, he was referenced by another name at some point. Like if you did that event, I think you learned of him, like he came up in the later parts of the story as Scaramouche, where he may have been like more talked about as the balladeer to the rest of us.
Or like question mark,
Yeah.
where they're like, you don't know who's talking.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think you're right with the balladeer stuff because I heard the name balladeer far more often before I heard the Scaramouche name.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that might just be because of one, when Child is talking about the Harbingers, or when we do get reference of Harbingers, it's really only their code names unless it's talking about Child, because we know him as Child and Tartaglia and multiple different names.
Boo thing.
No.
Can we get into the Unreconciled Stars event because it's wild? So that event, it not only introduces Scaramouche, it also introduces Fischl, Icon. We know her, we love her.
The
It also establishes the fun like Fischl Mona dynamic that we all know and love now years later.
You mean the wives?
Some people think of them as wives, yes.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that, just because I was like so amazed by it in the summer event, not knowing that this event happened.
Yeah.
Where you see them together. And I think like even back then looking it up, I was like, these two being like gal pals is my favorite thing.
Yeah, and it was so fun to go back and watch this event, and we'll put a link to the YouTube video on the website, but it's so interesting to see Mona meet Fischl for the first time. And you know, it's like Traveler and Mona sort of figuring out who Fischl is and like seeing her sort of break character and
She's
sort
a
of realizing like,
princessin.
oh, she's like a
Psycho.
cosplayer.
Psycho. Also, I love that this is the event that we got the big hat ship, aka Mona Skara ship. Don't love it. Not really, except for one piece of smut I've seen.
Oh no.
I like the Skara Mona ship. I'm a fan of it.
It's two big hats. Come on, big hats, love it. But Fischl, Mona, OTP forever. Love
I
it.
just like the idea that Mona and Skara are both always over it. Like Mona is so over it half the time, and she's like, I'm not broke. And he's like, yeah, he'd be like, yeah, bitch, you're broke. I gotta buy you dinner. Like, I don't know. They'd just be like a fun dynamic. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
He's like over it, and Mona's like over researching everything.
Yeah.
Because she's like still trying to make sense of everything, and he's like giving up. But yeah, so this event is Traveler, Fischl, and Mona, and they're investigating a meteor shower that occurs over Mondstadt and Liyue. And anyone who touches one of the meteorites that falls down from the heavens, they instantly fall into a slumber, and they dream, again, dreams. They dream about climbing a cold mountain. Fun fact, the meteorites also cause visions to sort of light up or shine brighter. So there's a lot of elemental energy going on. And we first meet Skara while we're investigating the disappearance of someone who works at the Dawn Winery, who we find out touched a meteorite in Liyue. And Skara shows up while we're investigating investigating, this person who's passed out, dreaming about climbing a cold mountain. And he introduces himself as a vagrant from Inazuma, which is funny because we find out later that he, at one point in his life, was a vagrant from Inazuma. Anyway, he later approaches the group and he has the intent to kill us, the Traveler. And Mona senses that there's danger happening. Like, Mona is able to read more than I think just the stars. Like, she actually takes a look at Scaramouche and instantly is like, danger, danger, danger. And she grabs Traveler and Fischl and teleports us away to safety.
Don't we learn in the summer event that she can see the future of people, but she can't see ours?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And apparently she can also teleport people away as well.
Which we haven't seen her do since.
Right.
Yeah, it's weird, right?
Like, ma'am, this is so incredibly fast. I mean, we, the Traveler, can do it anytime, motherfucking anytime. But
I mean, she can turn into water and like
literally.
Yeah.
that's
run
true.
around as water droplets. So
Maybe she can only teleport to where it's raining. It's like, there's water, it's wet, I can go.
It's like just to Rodea at every day.
Rose, oh
Yeah.
god.
That's the one like spot you'll always be able to go.
It's because she's drenched.
So Mona senses like an evil from Skara, right? And it's like, we got a GTFO.
Yeah. And we find out after they teleport away, that's when it's revealed that Skara is the sixth harbinger of the Fatui and that he was trying to kill the Traveler. And it's sort of like this big reveal that he's a bad guy.
The Traveler probably regrets it at this point. Cause like, I feel like the Traveler sometimes is like, someone, please kill me.
Well, what's funny is Traveler and Fischl were like, oh, hey, it's that vagrant from Inazuma. Hey, what's going on? And like, while Fischl's still like, my retinue of blah, blah, blah. Like, while she's still talking, Mona teleports them away, like cuts her off mid-sentence.
It's like, foul, you
We don't
have
got time for
just
this
come
shit.
up upon the princessin of
Yeah.
Arma Flumma Flum Flum Flum. I can't. I just know that in German, airplane is Flugzeug, and that's all I care about.
Yeah. She's like, Schliegen, Schlagen, Schlugen.
Schnickerdoodle.
I'm dead.
Wow.
We love Germany. I'm half
We
German.
do love you, Germany. Well,
We love 2023 Germany.
yes.
So anyway, we find out that these meteors that are falling are stars from someone's constellation, and they belong to this explorer named Leonard, who was around 2,000 years ago. And Mona notes that it's so strange that all these stars are like just randomly falling from the sky, belonging to the same constellation. And anyone who touches them are dreaming about Leonard's life goal, which was to reach the summit of Pylos Peak. Pylos Peak was a cold and snowy mountain. And no, it was not Dragonspine. It was actually what became Musk Reef. It was a big, cold mountain filled with snow. And at one point in history, Venti blew all the snow off of the mountains in Mondstadt, and it created the sea. And the sea swallowed up, the majority of Pylos Peak, so that only the tippy top of it remained and was an island. And that is Musk Reef.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Venti was like, this is not my aesthetic. Bye-bye. And made the best vacation spot.
I feel like Venti was kind of like, fuck you, Leonard.
What did he have against Leonard?
Yeah. Why couldn't he climb the mountain?
I think it was a coincidence. This was 2,000 years ago. So I think this was before Venti did anything. And back then, Leonard was an explorer and he just dreamed of climbing all the way up Pylos Peak. And I'm assuming he had a vision.
That's what I was going to ask. If he has a constellation and these are coming from down his constellation, was he gifted with a vision? Does this give us a timeline for visions?
Right. Were they all the way back 2,000 years ago?
So speaking of time, I'll just get to it really quickly. Timeline. 2,000 years ago. Is Vanessa around yet?
No.
I think it's before Vanessa.
That's before Vanessa.
I
Okay.
think so.
Is Zhongli around?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're after Zhongli. Okay. Thank you.
I'm wondering if it'll make it into the anime.
I hope so.
So let's jump back to Unreconciled Stars. So Mona helps us. We survive.
Yes.
And what happens from there, Brandon?
So after The Traveler clears out most of the meteorites, which allows everyone that touched one and fell into the slumber to wake up. And they sort of figure out, okay, this is Leonard's constellation. He had this life goal of climbing Pylos Peak, which is now Musk Reef. So Mona theorizes that the core of the constellation is going to end up at Musk Reef because that was his life dream. So we go there and we find Skara already there, and he's studying the core meteorite that fell there, and somehow he's able to touch it and enter the dream of Leonard, but then he's also able to wake himself up, which no regular human is able to do. I don't know if this is because he's a puppet or because of his powers that the Fatuus unlocked.
Or some abyssal shit.
Yeah. So he's able to wake himself up, and then like Mona and Traveler are like, hold up, how are you able to do that? What's going on? And Mona's like, what do you know about Leonard? And Scaramouche is like, Leonard? Who's Leonard? Like, I don't even care about that. He's like, I discovered a more terrifying truth, which is that the stars are a lie.
The Big Bang Theory. Oh no.
He says the stars, the sky, it's all a gigantic hoax, a lie. And then he says, what was the jester thinking? The jester, mind you, is Piero, the leader of the Fatui Harbingers. He said, what was the jester thinking? He must have had some inkling of what we might discover on this mission. Would it really have been so difficult to give me a little forewarning? Or maybe he just wanted to give me a fright. Time for me to go out and find the truth. So long, suckers, and then leaves.
I'm
so
dead.
He's like not even interested in attacking Mona or the Traveler. He's just like, the sky is fake, the stars are a lie, and now, you know, I'm sort of being toyed with by the Fatui, so I gotta sort of figure things out.
That kind of ties in with the Commedia dell'arte version of Scaramouche, of like how he's not a violent person, he's a manipulator. So he's like, I've learned I'm being manipulated by the people I'm trying to manipulate. What the fuck?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm supposed to do that.
Which is really interesting too, because that's basically his relationship with the Fatui, as we find out later on.
But he has so many names now.
That's the first time that we see Scaramouche, and honestly, it's the time that most of us have never seen him. The second time that Scaramouche is shown in the game, and the first time most travelers, including all of us, have seen him, is when we run into him in the Delusion Factory during the Inazuma Archon line. So a quick recap on that. We have joined Swordfish 2. Is that battalion that we are in charge of?
Yes, the worst fucking name.
They're like, oh, you're really awesome. Here, have a boat.
Yeah. Have a platoon.
Yes.
Are you kidding? Swordfish 2?
Yeah.
We couldn't be Barracuda? We couldn't have something like pizzazzy?
It's because we use a sword.
Yes, but why Swordfish 2?
It's cool.
No. We should be Swordfish, the first.
Nah. The second's always better.
The second is shit.
We were Swordfish 2, captain in charge, and we had one person that we loved checking in on named Tepe, and Tepe wasn't in Swordfish 2 with us. Some major angst coming your way. Tepe, we meet before we even become the leader of Swordfish 2, and Tepe all of a sudden is like really quickly rising through the ranks, and we're really proud of him, and we're not really around to see what's going on with Tepe. And one day we go to check in, we're on Watasumi Island, we're at Goru with the Kokomi, and we find out that Tepe is basically dying, and we're like, what the fuck? And we go and we see Tepe, and Tepe has aged by like 80 years.
Gotcha, bitch.
Like, what happened to like the 20-year-old that we were hanging out with and talking with? He is like old and dying, and we find out that he had been given a delusion. And this is when the whole big Inazuma plotline shifts, and you find out that the Fatui have been secretly supplying delusions to the resistance at Watasumi Island. And that's kind of why the resistance has been doing better for the most part, because they have been stronger because they all are using delusions. And you find out that many of them are dying and getting sick because of it. And Tepe happens to be the one we're connected with. And Traveler, for the very first time, shows such immense anger and disgust and goes and talks to Kokomi and is like, I'm going to shut this down, and figures out where they're making the delusions. And so we go to a place called a Delusion Factory, and it is a domain. We go into the domain, we fight through a bunch of levels, and the last person we run into is none other than Scaramouche. Now, if you were any of us, this was the first time you met Scara. You probably had never heard of even Unreconciled Stars, so you really didn't know what was going on. I hated him. You know, I really like Child. We all know that. I know it's not a popular opinion amongst my peers, but I like Child, and I thought Child had a really good redemption arc. And when I finished dealing with Scaramouche, who in the moment basically calls us weak and says the very famous TikTok line where he's like, "You're barely 3 words in and you already want me dead." Very hot. I'm like, why? Ugh, I don't want to like you. And then
Hot. Feeny, you gotta type.
Yeah, I
You
was just
gotta
thinking
type
that.
and it's
I was
psycho.
Like, you and your bad boys.
I like Albedo and Tingari too, though.
I know, but it's like one or the other.
Yeah, you're like real wholesome or like
Real
the
evil.
epitome of a hestophiliac.
It needs therapy. So he puts out like a poison into the air basically, and we start to pass out, and we kind of see Yaimiko. Yeah, we find out that Yaimiko rescues us, but in order to save our life, Yaimiko had to give Scaramouche the electro-gnosis that she had been holding on to for A. So now the 6th Fatui Harbinger has the electro-gnosis and runs away to never be seen again. And I mean that quite literally, because eventually we run into Child in Inazuma, who has been sent on the hunt to find Scaramouche, because ever since he got the electro-gnosis, he hasn't been seen again.
Which is funny because he was originally created to house A's gnosis.
Yeah. It's
just
like it
doing
went
his
back to where
job.
it belonged originally.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's also like the big fuck you moment for him, for the Harbingers, of like, you played me, I play right back.
Yeah, and also a big fuck you to A, who he felt like abandoned him. Scaramouche actually has this whole storyline where he feels like he suffered 3 betrayals. And the first one is A, which he sort of considered to be his mother abandoning him. And, you know, the way that A saw it was he was just this prototype puppet. And she actually took mercy on him by stealing his power and letting him live as a human. But Scara didn't see it that way. He saw it as a betrayal and abandonment.
So then the next time that we see Scaramouche in-game is again locked behind an event, and that is during Inazuma's Irodori Festival, where we find out that Scaramouche killed one of Kazuha's ancestors. And it was very sus, because for those of you who didn't do the Irodori Festival, there was this whole puzzle with a story around Kazuha's family, and no one really knew what was going on, and there were these hints everywhere, and we had this really interesting ragtag team of Xingqiu, Kazuha, Albedo, Venti, people you didn't expect to be together, helping us. I think Ayaka was there as well. And the entire time, we are actually working through, I believe, like a poem of sorts, and for every act of the poem, Albedo paints a scene, and for the very last painting, he actually paints Scaramouche in a way that looks just like Scara. So there was a lot of suspicion from the Irodori Festival that Scaramouche would be coming back into the spotlight sometime soon. And there was a lot of questions about if people knew what he looked like as well. Like, how did Albedo find the inspiration to paint Scara of all people? Yeah, there was like a lot of questions online about it, because in this quest line, you find out that somebody killed Kazuha's ancestor. And we see in a cutscene that it was Scaramouche, but like no one actually knows that. Just not even the traveler, it's just us, the viewer.
There's a couple of theories that the one I primarily subscribe to is that when it came to telling the story of this poem, because not only was Scaramouche represented, we had Venti, we had Ayaka, we had Kazuha in those frames. I think Albedo kind of used who he saw to do it, and we do I think there's like a secret place where Scaramouche is looking at the Irodori Festival, or is it Ayato? I'd have to go back to it.
I think it's Ayato. Scara, I don't think, is anywhere near us during the festival.
Because Albedo is quite old, he is chalk.
His age is unconfirmed. I would like to let everyone know that he is he was not at the Cataclysm. Like, minimally. That is, like, proven. He might only be, like, 100 years old.
He could be as young as what 24 and as old as 499 years old. We don't really know, but the fact that, he is so knowledgeable of certain things, I have no doubt that he might have an inkling of how the balladeer might look. He might have taken, stories from what the traveler had told him.
I feel like even with the other ones in that painting, though, it seemed to me that he was drawing it based on what was in his head, like scenes that came to him, and it was almost coincidental that they looked like the people we already knew. And I kind of took it that way, and so he almost had this vision of Balladeer, and that's why he painted him.
So he gets visions when he paints. Ooh.
Well, I mean, he does some fun stuff, so.
I was on like a totally different wavelength because for some reason I thought that Albedo had these people posing for him and he was like openly telling them that they were his inspiration. I feel like I remember that with Xingqiu specifically.
Maybe for Ayaka, Xingqiu, and Venti and Kazuha. That would make sense for the four of them because he has direct access to them. There are some theories out there. I don't know, in all honesty.
I'd like to say that I don't think that Albedo knows what Scara looks like.
Paint me like one of your French girls, Albedo.
Please. But yeah, Scaramouche was kind of on a rampage in Inazuma about like 200-300 years ago. We didn't know why. And that actually gets cleared up when we enter the Sumeru Archon line. So I'm going to talk really quickly about the general Archon line, and then we can jump into the whole Archon quest afterwards. So when we enter Sumeru, we are looking for Nahida. We are looking for the Dendro Archon. We tell them we want to talk to her, blah, 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 blah. So we go on this hunt for her. We end up in this whole convoluted situation where Nahida is locked away and we have to save her and yada, yada, yada. So we embark with yet again another interesting ragtag team of people to free the god, which is something I never thought we'd be doing in this game. And it's like Al-Haytham, it's Sino, it's Deha, it's Candace, Nilu, barely Tignari, but I'm going to mention it because we go to Tignari at one point and we go to talk to Hypatia. And we've met Hypatia before and she is ill. And when we touch her, we end up seeing Scaramouche. And he goes through exactly what he's going to do. We are like connected to his consciousness. And we find out that he is becoming a false god and that he's been working with Dottore as well as the sages of Sumeru to become a false god. It's a whole wild line. We've talked about it a little bit before in our Sumeru episode, so I'm not going to get too into depth about it. I will say at that point, he does strike Tignari with a lightning bolt. Very sad for me. And then we go and we end up fighting Robot, Transformer, Pacific Rim, whatever you want, Scaramouche. We win.
Evangelion. Mm-hmm.
And Nahida takes him and is like, don't worry, I'm going to handle him. And that's where we originally end in the Archon line with Scaramouche. Until we get Scaramouche's own Archon line, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And that is when we see him in Sumeru, and we're like, wait, what the frick? Paimon's like, who let him out of his cage? Like, she starts panicking. We follow him back to Nahida's place. What is it called where she is?
Her bird cage.
Yeah, we end up at the bird cage.
Yeah, bird cage.
Where Nahida has really reclaimed it to be her space. And we find Scaramouche with her. And Paimon's like, Nahida, what are you doing? Like, really starts to scold her. And Nahida's like, Brock, calm down. And she explains that we're going to be using Scaramouche to go into Irminsul. And for our travelers who need a quick refresher, Irminsul is the tree of knowledge and basically of life that is based out of Sumeru, but it's for all of Teyvat. And we find out that Scaramouche has actually gone on trips before into the Abyss and into Irminsul, and he will be very helpful in finding some new knowledge about our sibling. Because the last time we saw Nahida, she told us that we were a descender, and that our sibling was not a descender, meaning that our sibling was a person of Teyvat, quote unquote, and that we are not, which makes no sense because we're supposed to be twins. And that we're going to go into Irminsul to see if we can find some more knowledge on our sibling or about us. And when we go down there with Scara and, Paimon the whole time is like, why are we trusting him? We find out that Scaramouche's entire life path was basically sabotaged by Dottore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Dottore is a big old bitch, and I hate him.
So I guess a little bit more about that. So Scaramouche is looking for memories of our sibling in Irminsul, or of us in Irminsul, and is immediately clicked with a memory of his own, basically. Except it's his memories and his friends' memories. So it's like a different, it's not his memories, I should say. It's memories of his friend.
Nahida, actually, when she is connecting with Dottore to confirm that he erased all of the copies of himself, she gets the information from his memories about Skara, and she eventually reveals them to Skara. And it goes back into this whole timeline, which was 400 years ago, 100 years after the Cataclysm, which makes me think that maybe he was created after the Cataclysm, like that maybe A created this prototype puppet shortly after the Cataclysm.
Yeah, I would think so. She did it after
Losing Makoto.
Yeah, and she got like in charge.
So he was created around then, but the events of the storyline happened 400 years ago, and he was a wandering vagrant, which is funny because, you know, he introduced himself as that to Mona and Fischl and Traveler. And he ended up in Tatarasuna, which is the sort of smelting area of Kanazuka Island in Inazuma. And he was known as the Kabukimono, which means eccentric stranger. Just some backstory. Do you all remember Chio, the Oni lady that was like one of the inner circle of A? So she's the one who went mad from abyssal corruption during the Cataclysm, and she ended up attacking A. And A, of course, like sliced one of her horns off and her arm off, and then we don't really know for sure what happened to her. Anyway, Chio had a foster son named Mikoshi Nagamasa, and Mikoshi ended up, after all that happened, he ended up joining the shogunate to try to make amends for the shame that his foster mother brought on the family name by attacking A. And he ended up becoming a bladesmith in Tatarasuna. Again, Tatarasuna is the smelting area of Inazuma. You might remember the furnace that we have some quests surrounding. So the Tatarasuna is like the furnace area of Inazuma. So Chio's foster son Mikoshi, he ended up joining the government to try to make up for his mother's betrayal of the shogun, and he ends up with the title inspector, and he has two superiors. One is the vice armory officer Miyazaki, and the other is his boss, which is the armory officer Niwa. He also has a little entourage, which features his assistant Katsuragi, an artist named Nozomu, and someone that I sort of think in my head as a historian named Kenjiro, and I'll get into that in a second. There's not really much about Kenjiro, but so we have this whole cast of characters. We have the big boss Niwa, Niwa's second in command Miyazaki, then we have the inspector Mikoshi, and then we have Mikoshi's entourage, which is his assistant Katsuragi, the artist Nozomu, and the historian Kenjiro. So Niwa was a prominent sword art clan member. So back in the day, the shogun passed down, you know, her sword art disciplines to different houses and clans, and there were 5 different schools of sword arts, which is called the Raiden Gokuden. And there was one of these arts was the Ishin art, and that art had different clans associated with it. One of them was the Kaidahara clan, which is Kazua's family. Niwa was one of the other clans. So that was sort of like the contemporary of the Kazuha clan. And the successor of that clan was just, you know, we're just going to call him Niwa. And so he was the boss of this whole smelting area of Inazuma. So they're all hanging out. Katsuragi, the assistant, he discovers Skara on Azuchi Beach on Yashiori Island, which is like a beach that sort of connects Yashiori Island and Kanazuka Island. And he brings him like back to the fold in Tatarasuna. So they know that he's a puppet, and they sort of accept him into their little ragtag family, right? Now, there's this really creepy story. This is just an aside. There's this really creepy story in which Skara is hanging out on the beach before Katsuragi finds him, and he's like being stalked by this black storm cloud, which I think is maybe a Fatui creation, and the way it's described sounds a lot like the smoke monster from Lost.
Oh geez. Oh no.
And anyway, so this like smoke monster black storm cloud is like hounding Skara while he's like hanging out on the beach trying to ignore it. And then this fishing boat passes by and the cloud attacks the fishing boat and runs it into the shore, explodes it, just like kills everything, destroys everything. There was a fisherman on board. He's killed, and
Jesus Christ.
he's like dismembered. Half of his arm lands in front of Skara on the beach with a plop. And Skara, it literally says he resists the urge to take a bite out of the arm.
Ooh.
Which is so creepy. And then
This has to be a reference to something. I need to figure that out. Oh my
I hope
god.
so, because it's really creepy. And then when history gets revised later, which we'll get to, it ends up being Dottore who the arm falls in front of, and then it says Dottore resists the urge to take a bite.
I mean, that's
I would
more
expect
common.
Dottore to eat it.
Like
That's a more
Dottore,
normal situation.
he's such
Yeah.
a sociopath. Okay.
Yeah, why are the Fatui eating people?
Anyway, so Katsuragi, the
It's a
assistant,
side effect of the delusion.
Yeah.
Katsuragi finds Skara on the beach. He brings him into the entourage, and they know that he's a puppet. Katsuragi and Niwa are particularly close with Scaramouche, and Niwa even tells him, you know, we think of you as human. The only thing that you're missing is a human heart in order for you to, you know, be a
Oh.
human.
Oh no.
So they're all hanging out together. This group, they create this beautiful sword together called the Daitatara Nagamasa, which eventually gets renamed the Katsura Gikiri Nagamasa. I don't know if I'm pronouncing any of this right. And Nozomu, the artist, was so moved by the beauty of the sword that they all created together that he draws/paints a picture of it. Meanwhile, Dottore, on a mission from Piero to sow chaos into Tarasuna, he infiltrates the group, posing as a mechanic from Fontaine named Escher. And he introduces this new smelting technique to the group that sort of transforms, you know, their abilities in terms of smelting. But the whatever method he used, which is Fatui technology, it causes this filth to accumulate from smelting the crystal marrow, which I don't know if y'all remember crystal marrow, but it accumulates around the corpse of Orobashi, the big snake god that A slaughtered on Yashiori Island.
Mhm.
So they're using this like crystal marrow to melt things in the furnace, the Mikage furnace. And so it's weird because Dottore, he introduces this new smelting technique, which is using this, but it's also causing this filth to accumulate. And then he turns around and introduces a means to clean the filth.
Mm.
So he's like, I created this problem, but guess what? I have a solution as well. And so Niwa, the big boss guy, the big, you know, one of the government employees who's the boss of everyone, who's also very close with Skara, he eventually becomes suspicious of Dottore, and he calls him out and confronts him, and Dottore kills him, and Dottore cuts out Niwa's heart and
Ooh.
places it in this filth cleansing device that
Does he take a bite of it first?
No, he does not. No.
God damn. Such a missed
He-
opportunity.
I'm sure he wanted to.
He could have had a snack.
Like, I'm sure it was like calling out to him, but he resisted.
Like getting those valves, man.
So he kills Niwa, cuts his heart out, puts it in this filth cleansing device. Dottore then convinces everyone that Niwa abandoned them and that Skara is now their only hope to enter the furnace and cleanse the filth using this device that he created, because Skara's a puppet and a regular human would die. So Skara takes the device, he cleans the filth, and then Dottore opens the device, shows him this withered heart inside it that sort of sucked up all of the filth. He convinces Skara that this heart belonged to a subordinate of Niwa's, and that Niwa had that person killed. And this is the second of the 3 betrayals for Skara in his mind. He was, you know, enraged by his perceived betrayal by Niwa, and he throws the heart to the ground and storms off. Meanwhile, there's this whole fallout on the island from Niwa's, you know, so-called betrayal. And all of that came down on Mikoshi's shoulders. Mikoshi, again, is the foster son of Chiyo, the Oni, that was friends with A. So Mikoshi sort of getting blamed for Niwa's betrayal. And allegedly, Katsuragi, the assistant, decided to take the blame for all of this. And he was killed by Mikoshi because Mikoshi's a little bitch. Mikoshi ends up killing him with the sword that they all created. And Mikoshi's so upset because he's like, oh my God, I'm an asshole. And so he throws the sword into the furnace. Nozomu, the artist, is like, no, we can't lose the sword. He dives into the furnace to get the sword back. And he does successfully, but he's burned so badly that he later dies. And Kenjiro, the historian, hides the sword and Nozomi's artwork in a little cave near the furnace called the Arsenal. So that's sort of like the drama that plays out with this entourage group. Meanwhile, Scaramouche leaves and he finds a sick child, a little boy.
So you're saying like this is like everything's done, Skara abandons like the area and goes to like start a new life type of thing?
Thought he comes back to figure out the furnace stuff and he takes the heart. And the only reason he survives is because the heart, swallowed everything because Niwa loved him.
Well, the heart was in the device that he took into the furnace. And the heart did suck up all the filth. So the heart did save him, but he didn't know it at the time.
No. But it was Niwa loving him that saved him. And
then Dottore convinces him that it wasn't Niwa's heart, but it was some subordinate of Niwa's that Niwa had murdered.
For some reason, I thought that happened before he went in.
And so he leaves that area, like he leaves everyone. He finds a sick boy who ends up dying, and that becomes the third betrayal because, which I thought this is part of why I call him a weasel, because I'm like, really, like you meet the sick boy and the boy dies and you blame him for dying.
Yeah, because the kid promised that he wouldn't leave him.
Yeah, it's so stupid. Anyway, this boy, I think, succumbed to Tarigami, which is this weird curse that's happening on Yashiori Island where the corpse of Urabashi is. And all of the people that live on this island at some point sort of become poisoned or cursed by this energy. It goes back to like the idea of the yakshas and how they get poisoned by these dead gods. It's that same idea where like this dead god's energy is polluting this island. It's driving people mad. It's making them bleed out of their orifices and doing all kinds of crazy things. It makes them hallucinate.
Not their orifices.
Do you all remember a little kid named Chuji?
Oh, is that the guy that kept wanting, can you get me crystal marrow?
Yes.
That fucker.
Yeah, and at first you're like, this little asshole, but then you realize his parents are gone. His dad disappeared during the war between Inazuma and Watatsumi, but his mother, actually, she gets contaminated by this curse.
It doesn't help that their little house is so close to the fucking spine of Urabashi.
Yes. And so she gets cursed by this Tatarigami, right? But for some reason, she's special and she can hold the curse without it killing her. So she's like able to survive this curse. And she ends up leaving on a boat to Sumeru because she is told that there are people there that can help her figure out what the sickness is and how to combat it. And then it's like this whole sad thing because Chuji thinks that his parents are in Snezhnaya. And so he's trying to get to Snezhnaya while his mom is in Sumeru.
Poor baby. Oh my god.
But it's also, this Tatarigami curse is also strange because the people who suffer from it hallucinate about this evil god. And I was a little confused because one of the people contaminated by it, he describes it as having 18 pairs of blood red eyes, thousands of sharp venomous fangs, countless mouths and numberless tongues, ever thirsting after blood. And I'm assuming that that is sort of an exaggerated description of Urabashi.
I sure hope so.
I mean, it's a small child who's saying it, so they're more than
No. This wasn't a child. This was Washizu, who is like the head of the village of Chuji's village.
Right.
You know, it could be the same cloud that you were talking about earlier.
Ooh. It's very reminiscent of Sumeru and the Forbidden Knowledge and Elazar. I am waiting for Chuji's mother to show up in Sumeru, and I haven't since we got there, and I need that to happen.
Do we know her name?
I wonder if she is there. Yeah, and we just haven't like realized it's
That's
her.
what I'm wondering. I'm like,
she might
God.
be. what if she's in Sumeru City, but you know where that outdoor tent hospital thingy is, which is like the worst place you could put sick people. It's just out in the open.
Yeah, we need to look for her.
We'll find her. You know what? We need to grab the child. We need to kidnap the child.
Yeah, we need to bring Chuji to Sumeru.
And make sure he doesn't go to Shinashnaya because we know what they do to kids.
Oh my god, yeah.
It's like a year down the line, we're just fighting a random, very small Fatui, and it's like, oh, wait.
He ended up in the orphanage.
We gotta save that boy.
So to backtrack, so Skara, this little boy, dies that he likes, right? The third betrayal.
The reason that it might have been the Tatarigami curse is because in the cutscene about it, he's burning the house down that the little boy lived in, which is sort of, people think is because he was contaminated. So he had to like burn his body and the whole house.
Which is very considerate of him, though. He tried to keep all the other people safe. So that's really what Skara finds out, right? And he finds out that the fact that he killed the Kazuha's ancestor and the fact that he did all this, he finds out that, Niwa wasn't a bad guy and everything, and he has like kind of like a maniacal moment in like Irminsul with us where we kind of step back to give him time, and he's like going Dottore, like he's like very maniacal. He's like ready to get revenge.
Yeah, I mean his whole trajectory was pushed off course by Dottore.
Yeah,
like he finds out that Niwa didn't betray him and that his whole life trajectory was a lie orchestrated by Dottore, and Niwa didn't actually betray him, and he thought that he did. So it was very like existential, like I wish that I never went down this path.
And so Skara pulls us aside, and we find out that he still has some of his power left over, something that Nihida didn't think he had. And he pulls just the two of us into a circle, and he reads our mind, and he asks us if Irminsul can change history. And the traveler makes this face, and he goes, "Thank you for answering." And he decides that he's going to go into Irminsul, basically, and that he's going to delete himself from existence. And he succeeds. And so we wake up, and we end up in a house that Nihida told us that we should stay in until she figures it out. And of course, Nihida doesn't figure it out. And no one knows who Scaramouche or the Balladeer or Kuni is. And we go on this journey to try to find him, and Paimon's like, "What the hell is wrong with you?" And before we find him, we decide to go to Inazuma to make sure to like Kazuha's alive and that our friends are okay. And we find out that history has been slightly changed. So now I forget who actually killed Kazuha's ancestor in this like changed timeline, but it's someone different. And we go back to Sumeru, and we run into Scaramouche, who has no recollection of being Scaramouche. He just knows himself as the Wanderer.
Oh, before we get fully into this part, I would love to deep dive into the model changes.
Yeah, of course.
His aesthetic. So the Scaramouche that we all know and love, the red, the purple, the black, fucking goth shit, beautiful, such a vibe, is very much based on the Kabuki Mono theater, as well as basically the term of being a kabuki, which is like a wanderer, an outsider, someone who's an outcast of society, people who, don't follow the social norms. Very much Skara. He very much rejects that, which, perfect. It's also kind of not a exact synonym for wanderer, but it is associated with wandering. The Kabuki Mono operas and plays are based around like wandering samurai or ronin, those who don't have a master, which parallels so well with his entire storyline in his character arc. But we have all these like symbols of Inazuma. We have a lot of more of the kabuki, the specifically on his shoulder, his white and purple checkered rope. That is very reminiscent of kabuki costumes in these plays, as well as the kabuki mask. And then we meet him when we get back to Sumeru, when he's done, Control-Alt-Delete himself, which that's fucked up to say, but he does. He's in a very similar outfit, but it's a different aesthetic. We have this beautiful blue. His hat is no longer very super intricate. It is a golden lotus. There there is so many Buddhist symbolisms in this outfit that make me think like, oh, he's turned over a fresh new leaf. And he really has, because he's completely forgotten who he originally was, his whole past. He has the lotus, which is the flower of the Buddha. We can get even further into that with the goddess of flowers and how like a magenta lotus, a pink or purple lotus is the lotus of Buddha. We have at the very end of his little wispy palais or whatnot,
The things hanging off the hat.
yeah, there's some rings connected to that, and they're called shigujos, which I'm more than likely pronouncing wrong. And they're kind of like these circlets that are usually adorned by Buddhist monks on their staffs. If you can remember Moroku's staff from Inuyasha,
Yeah.
and each side has 3, that's exactly what it is. So this idea of Buddhism being intrinsical to his design is so important with Rebirth. It's, oh my God, it is so good of how like in depth they went with that. There are even more symbols. I just can't remember all of them right now. But go deep dive into that shit. There's even more symbolisms with even Chinese mythology and Chinese social structures in his old model. Anyway.
And I think it's all really interesting because that's like the first thing that we notice as a character too. The Traveler's like, what the hell? His whole thing has changed.
Exactly.
Like we're looking at his
Yeah.
like gothic look and it's no longer gothic. It's kind of like, happy.
He
Yeah, I
rewrote
mean-
the timeline.
He did.
And just to follow up on the Tatara Suna storyline, when he rewrites the timeline, we find out that Dottore still ended up infiltrating the Tatara Suna region and creating chaos and, filth within the furnace. And we find out that Niwa still dies because it was Niwa and some other swordsmith that end up using the device to cleanse the filth. And the cost of that was their lives. So it's funny because he sort of tried to change everything or remove himself, and you would think that it ended up in like these big changes, but really the history didn't change that much.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, even if he was part of it, but he wasn't the catalyst of these events. Like, it wasn't because Skara was, basically adopted by Niwa that Dottore was able to infiltrate.
Right.
Dottore was going to get in there no matter what. So it kind of shows probably what Skara thought is like, if I go back and Control-Alt-Delete me from the timeline, I can save these people and redo what I did wrong. And it's like, you never really did anything wrong. You were just, a product of your circumstance. This poor baby is trauma. I can't.
Yeah, it is really traumatic. This is like a therapist's dream, I think, or nightmare, depending on who you ask. But so we run into the Wanderer in a market in Sumeru, and he's like trying to work, and the guy's like, yo, this guy sucks at his job, but he like offered to work for free, so I'm letting him. And we're like, nah, we're gonna figure this out. So we take him to Nahida and we explain to Nahida what the hell happened, and Nahida's like, oh shit. And then we realize that Nahida has actually left herself breadcrumbs in the form of children's stories and doodles. And she's like, oh yeah, here, I found the story. I remember. And this is like her fall safe so that if anyone ever changes Irminsul, she'll remember. Very strange. And she tells us we have to go basically into, I don't remember if it's Irminsul or into like a plane of consciousness, but we're going to have to go through and help the Wanderer remember who he is. So even though history will not change back and revert back, he will have his memories back. And he says he wants to do that. And we go through this whole interesting domain. And to me, the domain was really cool because it brought you through a few things we already knew, such as the Niwa situation and whatnot, but seeing it from Scaramouche's point of view. So we actually see his point of view in the Delusion Factory, where he actually has a conversation with La Signora prior to us arriving. And he basically tells Signora to like be careful that like, he's not going to be able to cover her ass. And he says that like Signora and Child always make things so difficult. And then Signora dies like 10 minutes later, so he was right. I'm sure that was a little traumatizing for him as well.
Oh no, that was absolutely vindicated. He was like, fuck yeah, bitch. Get fucked.
Well, I think paired a little bit for her and Child.
I don't know, because he refers to them as in like the scene in the Delusion Factory. He says, oh, like my incompetent colleagues.
But he also talks about us like that still.
Well, yeah, he's an asshole.
Yeah.
He's a
That's what
dick.
I'm saying, though, is sometimes people who are like that are more so projecting.
The most tsundere bitch we've ever met.
I think he actually cares for Signora and Child because they're probably the only like Fatui harbingers that haven't like directly hurt him, because we find out through some context clues that they've done a lot of experimentation on Skara, and we find out that's how they release the powers from within him. We also find out that he is sent into the abyss often on travels, and that when he's not in the abyss, he has to get patched up from the abyss. So a lot of the higher ranked harbingers have put him through a lot of shit, it seems like. So I would think that Signora and Child, being two people that he seems to have worked with as well, even though he thinks they're idiots, loves them a little bit, in my opinion. We find out all this crazy shit about him being in the abyss all the time. We really don't know what he was doing in the abyss so far, and we help him get his memories back. And that's when we are invited to rename him and do the names that we did earlier. But yeah, wild stuff, right? Did we miss anything on his character arc?
Well, when we're actually dealing with him at Irminsul, like when he actually goes in to erase himself, he gives us some hot goss on our abyss twin. And he says that the reason why there are records about your sibling in Irminsul, it might have something to do with Conria. Apparently, Conria was their first destination when they arrived in this world. Plus, they only came to this world because the heavens responded to the summoning, whatever that is. Paimon says the heavens responded, and Skara says, the jester told me this himself. Again, the jester is Piero, the leader of the Harbingers. You can take his word on this. He was a royal mage in Conria and lived with your sibling for a time. So roll the tape back in our second episode when we talked about Kaya, and we theorized that Piero was his father and that Piero might have been the king of Conria. We know that he's not the king, but we do know that he was a royal mage in Conria. I still believe the theory that Kaya is Piero's son.
Mm-hmm.
That still is holding up.
Yeah.
This also sort of, I guess, provides some reasoning into everyone's confusion about the descender situation and why our sibling is not considered a descender because they're within Irminsul, which means that they are from Teyvat. But Skara is saying that Conria was their first destination when they arrived in this world. So Skara is actually, like, from reading Irminsul, is like telling us that no, our sibling was not from this world, but apparently is sort of written into Irminsul because Conria was their first destination when they arrived.
I'm still confused because what the fuck? God damn it.
I thought it also kind of proved that people like the jester have altered Irminsul in ways.
It definitely could be part of it.
Like they're doing too much of the storyline. Like first it's, Ruka Devada, like altering Irminsul, like with the help of Nahida, and then it's Scaramouche altering. Like it just seems like they're sort of setting it up to where, yeah, Irminsul was edited.
Yeah. Because I feel like for 5 minutes we were like, oh my God, our twin's not our twin. And then we're like, oh, well, maybe it is.
I know, we were for a second like, oh shit.
Are we cloning? Are we Dottore?
Also, like, our twin only came to this world because the heavens responded to the summoning. What the hell does that mean?
I have a theory, but I don't want to go into that in this episode.
I think we mentioned it in another episode, but there was some kind of like, I think it was Celestia puts out like a cry for almost like help that, with the unknown god. I could just be talking out my ass right now, but
it might be the other way around because we know that the travelers were coming from a world that was like under destruction.
We do.
No, I feel like we knew that there was shit was happening to Conria.
Oh.
And we answered a call. Like I think we found that out in another portion.
I can't remember. There's so much.
Well, I think that we might be jumping a little too far ahead.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I want to wrap things up real quick. I do just want to throw out there that, there's a lot more that's probably going to come with Scaramouche. She is now kind of like a soldier of Nahida, or I should say the Wanderer. He's now a soldier, of Nahida. So there's a chance that we're going to see him again. And it'll be very interesting to see how Skara changes in the upcoming updates as well. There's a part of me that thinks that he might try to go to Dottore or the Jester and seek revenge. There's a part of me that thinks thinks that he might be a little calmer now, and he might even go to see Kazuha or some people in Inazuma to apologize in his own way. Obviously, he can't go up to Kazuha and be like, hello, my name is Kyo, and I murdered your ancestor 100 years ago.
My name is Kyo. I like to killo.
Yeah. So he might do something. I don't know. I really personally would like to see him and Child together again. And in my own delusional world, I would love to see it where Skara convinces Child to leave the Fatui Harbingers.
That would be interesting, but Child doesn't remember him.
That's also true.
In fact, after he rewrites history, the 6th spot among the Harbingers is said to have been vacant for hundreds of years.
Which, isn't that like real fucked up that, you know, there's a bunch of Harbingers that are like, you know, 7 through 11 and none of them were offered the 6th seat.
Yeah.
They weren't strong enough.
You know, there's a rumor that might not be true. That's just what Child thinks. You know, it also leads a lot of really interesting questions now that the memory of Scaramouche and the Wanderer and the Balladeer is removed from history. It does ask a lot of questions like, what does Child think he was doing in Inazuma? Who did Yaimiko give the gnosis to save our life? There's a lot of questions that we haven't seen answered yet. And I really hope that they take the opportunity to answer these questions. And, you know, prior to recording, I was chatting with Tiff, and Tiff was pointing out to me how Skara has a really similar symbol on his neck to the Raiden Shogun and to A. I don't know if you wanted to talk about that, Tiff, but I just want to say, like, what happens when the Shogun sees that? What happens when A is like, yo, you have like the reverse of my symbol on your neck. How do I know you?
Is it still on his model now?
It is still there. We're going to include a picture of it on the site, but basically his shirt is actually see-through. Could only really see it in the sun, so it's a little hard to see, but it is there. I almost, like, my mouth dropped when I saw it because I was like, that can't be. But it is there.
Yeah.
It looks like an electro symbol almost, but it's kind of like where A's is more filled in, his is more of an outline. So I's is actually called a Mitsudomo, which is a threefold tomo, which is actually like in real world, not just in the game. And it's believed to actually represent like a threefold division of man, earth, and sky. In Buddhism, it's actually symbolizes the circle of life. But it's interesting that it's 3 because we know that it's I, Skara, and Raiden Shogun. So I haven't decided to go into the domain that fights Raiden to see if I can not die quick enough and see if she has it as well.
Oh, that's a good
But
question.
I would assume that she must have one too and somehow connects them.
There's just a lot of open-ended questions right now with Skara, and hopefully we will get some answers and some updates coming soon. I know there's been a lot of leaks out there, and we're not here to spread leaks because none of them could be true, but I've seen a lot of leaks, and there's a lot of interesting stuff coming our way, it looks like, in the next few months. So
you are the leak queen.
I know, it's so bad. I hate it. That's why I have to do stuff so quickly.
You said that this pod was supposed to be a leak-free zone.
It is. I'm just saying. I didn't leak anything.
Yeah, she doesn't share the leaks here, but she's looking at all of them.
All of that. You know what? Because I'm just like waiting. I don't know. I'm looking for breadcrumbs of the shit that I want to see. And then, you know, I'm constantly writing stuff for Nat and who's my Genshin OC. And every time I write for Nat, I have to think about what's going on in like the game and how that would affect like what's happening with her, because a lot of her storyline happens like before the game even starts. So I'm constantly like, oh my God, when the D-Luke event happened, where we found out that like he scarred Kaya, I literally had to go back and rewrite part of my story. Like I had to rewrite it. I had to do it. And then also with Kaya and Diluc kind of keeping in touch while he was away, I also had to go and rewrite some pieces. So I got to keep up to date with the leaks so I have an idea of what to do. An author's got to do what an author's got to do. But with that being said, I do think that's all the time we have for today. There's a lot of unanswered questions still, and I'm hoping that maybe next season or in a future update, we can talk more about Skara and have some answers to some of these questions.
I definitely think he's going to have a bigger part to play in, you know, the Fatui endgame scenario. Like, I think he's going to be like the key to bringing the Fatui down.
I can definitely see that. And that also feeds into my want for him to get Child to leave. We'll see you guys next week when we're actually going to be having our season 1 finale. It will be episode 20, which is going to be the Cataclysm, and that's going to mark the end of our first season.
Can you believe that it's been 20 weeks? Holy shit.
Almost 20 weeks.
Almost
Actually,
20
more
weeks.
than 20 weeks because we have done some shorts.
That's right. Oh my God.
20 episodes.
20.
Did you guys actually think we'd make it this far?
No. Let's go 100 more.
We will be finishing next week as our final episode of the season. Of course, you never know. We might release some stuff before season 2, which will start on March 15th. So mark your calendars. We're going to stick to Wednesdays at 8 a.m. for release dates. But we'll see you next week for the Cataclysm. A real tearjerker, for the last episode of the season then. Otherwise, travelers, safe journeys. We'll see you next week.
Bye, Weasel Nerds.